Hi, I'm Michael Clark and welcome to the road trip. Today on the road trip, we decided to take a road trip out to Whiteshell Provincial Park in Manitoba and test the 2014 Toyota Tundra. And it's not just any Tundra, this is the CrewMax, the 4x4, the iForce 5.7 liter V8, and it's about as highfalutin as you can get them in Canada. This is the 1794 edition of the Tundra, which is actually practically the same as the Platinum Edition. So let's explain what 1794 edition means, and let's start with explaining just how American the Toyota Tundra is. Because a lot of people may not be aware about all of the lengths that Toyota has gone to ensure that what we're looking at is the epitome of North American truck. So let's start with the design, and it has been refreshed for 2014, and it comes to us from the Calty Design Studio in California for Toyota. The engineering, well, that comes from the Toyota facility in Michigan. The powertrain elements, such as the engine and the transmission, well, they originate from both Alabama and North Carolina. And when it comes to final assembly, that happens in San Antonio, Texas. And that brings us to what these stars in 1794 edition actually mean, because the Tundra manufacturing facility is actually produced on a patch of land in San Antonio that was first a ranch that first came into being in 1794. You know, short of putting an American flag on the tailgate, it doesn't get much more American than that. But the other thing that we need to tell you about when it comes to the Toyota Tundra is exactly how well it's been doing in Canada. And let's give you the numbers on that. Now, in 2013, Toyota Tundra sold 7,553 units. That doesn't sound like a lot. But there's some other numbers that you need to know about, and the numbers I'm talking about are the number ones, and the number ones when it comes to awards. So let's talk about things like the ALG Residual Value Awards, and the Tundra has placed exceptionally high for many years with that. The Tundra has also done extremely well with the Canadian Black Book Retained Value Awards. So the good news is that if you're thinking about Tundra, you're going to have something that's going to hold its value for a very long time. The big concern that we've had with Tundra for many years is the economy. And it's something that, well, how do I put this? At one time, Toyota Canada was actually reimbursing journalists for their fuel that they would be using in the Tundra. That kind of said it all at the time. But now we're also dealing with other technologies from other manufacturers that are very compelling. The fact that Chevrolet and GM trucks have the ability to reduce their displacement, go from V8s or even V6s down to 4-cylinder displacement to help with their overall economy. Then there's the EcoBoost engines from Ford. Not to mention the fact that the Ram 1500 now has a 3-liter Eco Diesel available and punching through a magical number for Canadians, and that's 40 miles per gallon highway. So the question is, when exactly is Toyota going to get on the fuel economy bandwagon, and do they have to? Well, we're going to answer a lot of those questions today, as well as some of the other features and creature comforts that make the Tundra the truck that it is. And if you've got thoughts, feelings, or questions about anything truck, send an email to steelbeltedmind@gmail.com. Buckle up, it's time for the road trip. Now let's start with something that drives me absolutely nuts when it comes to lifting the hood on any vehicle. Do I have to search around? Do I actually have to bend down and fill my knees with fluid to find a hood release? I don't on a Tundra. You just go up to the front, you reach into the center underneath the Toyota logo. Isn't this sensible? Wow, there it is, right where it should be. Now, the hood is held aloft by the 2 struts. They're definitely some of the more robust ones, and I wanted to point out before we get to the engine here, we've got improvements for the 2014 model when it comes to NVH. So things like the hood insulator, inside the cab, the dashboard has different pads, the door panels have different pads. It's all designed to keep the inside as quiet as possible. Now let's talk about the engine that we have here. We have the iForce 5.7 liter V8 with this particular CrewMax Tundra. And if you like camshafts, and I mean really like them, you got 4 going on here. That's right, you've got twin dual overhead cam heads with this configuration, 32 valves, 381 horsepower, 401 foot-pounds of torque with this setup, mated to the super electronically controlled 6-speed automatic transmission. Now, the automatic transmission does have a manual gate, but remember, as we talked about earlier, there's no additional technologies here other than your variable valve timing with intelligence. So we're not making this V8 into a 4-cylinder or shutting anything down like that. But here's something that a lot of the North American trucks seem to have missed, and that's when it comes to servicing down the road. Now, if we take a look a little closer at the engine, the one thing that you're going to see, and whether or not you do any wrenching at all, but the one thing you're going to see when you look at the heads is the fact that the engine is not sucked into the firewall. In fact, on some trucks, like an F-150, like Chevrolets, you're going to find that the engine is set back in such a way that, well, it's not going to make it easy for getting back there when the time comes that you need to change those plugs. I have to say, as engine bays go, this is one of the most accessible on the market. There's not a bad fluid fill point in the place. Even the oil fill point, it has its own dedicated channel. You're not going to be spilling anything. I mean, you really have to try hard to spill something here. Even the washer fluid assembly is right where it should be. It's not buried down below or anything like that. So you're not going to have any issues accessing that. Same with the air cleaner assembly. So very simple to service, even if you're going to do a little bit of light servicing yourself. Now, take a look up front here on the front bumper and notice that what they've done is they've gone with a 3-piece design. Now, why exactly is that important? Well, think about the possibilities of how you're going to nick and scrape different parts of the truck in the ownership cycle. Maybe you don't want to have to go and replace the entire bumper assembly, and I'm sure your insurance company is going to appreciate only having to replace a piece as opposed to the entire thing. Now, fog lamps down below, but the headlamps, and you'll notice we do have the LED surround for the daytime running lights. They have the ability on this particular trim level to be manually adjusted. So depending on the load that's in the back of this particular CrewMax, you can adjust the headlamps accordingly so you're not searching for low-flying aircraft or searching for gopher holes. Now let's talk about the fuel situation that we've been experiencing so far with the Tundra, and in 4x4 configurations with this 5.7, we should be expecting to see around 11.9 liters per 100 kilometers according to the EnerGuide ratings. Well, let's just say it's been a little bit of a challenge to hit that. Now, using the speeds that we know that EnerGuide Canada uses, and that's 97 kilometers per hour, we've actually been seeing more in the realm of 13.7 liters per 100 kilometers. And we should also point out that it's still fairly cold today. I mean, we're hovering around the 0 degrees Celsius mark, and remember that those ratings are based on room temperature. So I'd have to say that we're actually fairly close to what one should be expecting with this truck. Now, considering that depending if you go with, say, Chevrolet, GM, or the F-150s, depending on powertrains and rear axles, you could probably get closer to the 10 liters per 100 kilometers. That's definitely going to sway a lot of people into the different brands because of it. The question is there enough compelling features within the Tundra as well as the drive quality to make you spend a little bit more on gas? Now, like many trucks in the class, there has been the concern of making a box size that is going to be a little bit more garageable, especially when you get into, well, take a look at the limousine style rear doors of the CrewMax, just to get a feel for how much more importance has been placed on the size of the cabin. Now, let's talk a little bit about the aerodynamics, because you'll notice here that we have these fins on the tail lamps. That helps with turbulence, and those fins actually occur up front with the exterior mirrors. You'll notice those little fins are there on purpose. But what's also here that you can't see is behind these particular extensions of the bumper. Now what we have, and it's very class leading, is a blind spot information system. And much like most of them that we've seen on different vehicles, you get the indicators on the exterior rear view mirrors when something is in this particular field. And it's something that a lot of other trucks need to think about adding to their standard and available options. Now, the one thing I like about the tailgate, and it's something we've seen on different tailgate designs, is, well, as I like to call it growing up in the 1980s, that's what we called soft eject for your cassette deck. So we've got a nice ability to lower the tailgate without having to hang on to it. But also, too, the counterbalance helps to make it easy to close. The backup camera on the Toyota Tundras is standard equipment. And as you can see, we do have a locking tailgate. Now, the one thing that I noticed already is that there's not a lot of graceful ways to get into the back of the box on this particular Toyota. In fact, it's something that we'd like to see them think about incorporating into the rear bumper, possibly additional steps, and we're certainly aware that they're available, but if you're going to send a tester through, you should probably send through things to test. So, let's see how graceful I can be with this one. Okay, and then use my extreme upper body strength to get in that way. There you go. Now, the tailgate is removable even with the camera, so you just have to make sure that you disconnect that properly. And the interior of the box, well, I've got to tell you, there's some things in here that look very familiar when it comes to Toyota truck. In fact, if you take a look at the movable cleats here, looks like they were born of Tacoma. So you can put them onto the sides for tie-down purposes, but you also have the ability to remove them and put them onto the front for additional tie-down points. Now, we're dealing with a factory box liner here, but you'll also notice that there is tie-down points inside the box that are still accessible with the cutouts that we have here. Very bright, very tight setup here for the rear cargo area lighting. And you should also know that on the Crew Max trucks, you also get the vertical descent power rear window. So in the event where maybe you had to haul a long item, it's definitely helpful that way. Toyota does not recommend that you keep it open for open air motoring, as those of us who grew up with the 1970s station wagons know, all the exhaust tends to kind of furl into the back and contribute to low test scores. Now, we've used the Hankook iPike RW11s before, and when it comes to an all-rounder for winter use, they're actually a pretty sticky tire. They even have the ability to add steel studs if you need for the iciest of conditions. But the one thing that we did notice is they're certainly a little bit noisy, and when it comes to winter tires, I like to say that if they're noisy, they're working. Now, the brakes on the Toyota Tundra, I guess the easiest way to explain it is they're about as overbuilt as you can imagine, because you have to remember that the Toyota Tundra is one of the few trucks that have decided to get online with the new SAE towing standards. So in the past, you had issues with manufacturers coming out and stating that their truck towed 10,500 pounds, and then the next day the press release came out for the competing truck figuring out that they just found an extra 500 pounds of payload. Well, the SAE standards are very tough, and Toyota has been adhering to them since the 2011 model year. So it's not just about the platform and capability of the truck. You've also got to think about other things that, well, are certainly going to come into play when you've got 10,000 pounds on the back, and that's your brakes. Now, we've got something here that almost sounds like the specs that we would expect to hear from vehicles like Porsche, because up front on the Toyota Tundra, this particular one has 4 piston calipers up front and 2 piston calipers in the rear, plus both front and rear use ventilated discs. So this is definitely the specs you want if you're going to be doing regular towing, and it's going to haul it down in a right hurry. Now the power exterior mirrors that we've got on Tundra, the one thing I should definitely point out is that for all trim levels, they are heated for Canada, so we definitely appreciate that. But the one thing I also wanted to show you is that they also have the power fold capability too. So you definitely want to come back to your truck in the parking lot or on the side street and see that your mirrors are still there. Now, when you pop them back out, like so, the other thing I wanted to point out is underneath. You actually do have puddle lamps that will shine down. But the other thing that I think they should think about, especially with all this power going on, is something along the lines of an LED exterior repeater so that pedestrians as well as other motorists are aware of your intentions. Now the configuration of something like the Toyota Tundra Crew Max is going to mean that you've got, well, a limousine back here really, but you've also got the opportunities, depending on the cargo that you're hauling, to reconfigure the seats. So the seat bottoms on the 2014 Tundra will actually get out of the way. So all you have to do is release the lever down low, bring it up like so. And this is important if you're going to be looking at a truck that has this capability. Make sure that whatever you're looking at locks it into place so that when you slam on the brakes, this isn't going to come slamming down on whatever antique find that you found at the thrift market. So all you have to do is just simply release like so, locks into place, and as you can see, locks down low too. So you've basically got two position locks here, and the way that the seat is configured, you're basically looking on the driver's side at about a 70%, 30% over on the passenger side for this fold-up feature. Now the expansive rear cabin has also addressed something that a lot of vehicles in the class have yet to figure out, and that's what do you do about making sure that the comfort level for the passengers inside is able to be maximized. Now in English, what I'm actually trying to say to you is, how do you decide what you're going to do with the rear seat belts? Well, it's surprising to me how many vehicles have yet to figure out what Toyota has for the Tundra, and that's to have adjustable outboard anchor points so you can be in a position, depending on the size of the occupant, where the seatbelt is exactly where it should be for maximum comfort. Now when it comes to maximum comfort here, you also do have a fold-down center armrest for the rear seat. There is a 12-volt power that can occur at the rear of the console, and there is rear HVAC vents in that console. Now the only thing that we were a little concerned about when it comes to pretty much the high load level truck for the Tundra is where exactly is the abilities to plug in 110. There's no AC power point that we can see, and doesn't appear to be occurring at any of the option level packages that we've seen. And I would have to say that because I've seen it on lower trim models, especially for General Motors, it's probably something that should be part of the standard equipment package for a Platinum or a 1794 edition. Now getting in and out of a truck like this with something resembling Grace involves having the proper assist handles, and you do have on the rear door compartments these very robust built-in handles as well as the top spring-loaded handles. You also get an additional assist handle for the front passenger mounted onto the A-pillar. We also have the storage pockets on the back of the seat backs. And the other thing that we should also point out here is that the vision out of the rear, even with the headrests in place, is actually quite good. It's certainly not like some of the boxing gloves that I've seen that have, well, pretty much left you to the camera when it comes to backing up. Now what I like about the controls of the Toyota Tundra is that they're extremely well laid out. In fact, downright Lexus when you start looking at some of the different features that exist for the 1794 edition. Now let me start with the controls on the driver door, because the one thing that I definitely wasn't expecting, especially because we're still at a very reasonable MSRP, is that we have two memory positions for the seating, and it's not just controlling the seat, it's also controlling the power, tilt, and telescoping column. again, very Lexus. It's awfully nice to have that to borrow from the bin. You know, speaking of different things that exist on this truck that we weren't expecting, if you take a look down low on the door pocket on the front, you'll notice the JBL audio. There's actually 12 speakers involved with this JBL audio system, which also includes a rear mount subwoofer behind the rear seat. The left side quadrant here of the instrument panel has additional controls. We do have our power mirror controls, as well as the power fold, as well as interior light controls and the cargo area lamp for the truck box. We also have the control to adjust the height of the headlamps, and that would be all dependent on what the load is on the truck. The on-off switch for the blind spot monitoring system. There's also a cross-traffic alert type of system, so when you're backing up, it's not just about using the backup camera. It will give you audible as well as lighted warnings in the mirrors to let you know that there is something that is in your rearward path. This is the control down low for the power rear vertical sliding window. And the parking controls, well, we're still using a typical parking brake pedal type of assembly. Push on, push off, does the job. The tilt and telescoping function here, as we mentioned, it is power. The headlamps do have an auto setting, and that's definitely appreciated. Also the location for your fog lamp controls. The information screen I find to be, well, a little bit light on the information. We don't have an actual speed setting. We do have exterior temperature control. And we also have the average fuel economy. And as you can see, it's been about as thirsty as we would expect it for the Toyota Tundra. There's also a current fuel economy meter and distance to empty, as well as the elapsed time start. The rest of the gauges, very clean, easy to read, and this is actually something I do like about the Tundra. Having driven the previous generation trucks, they tended to concentrate on, well, I guess the easiest way to say it is tunnel vision for reading the gauges, and it was hard to see all of the gauges at a glance. I do like having the ability to look at things such as the voltmeter and a proper temperature gauges for not only the coolant, but also the oil temperature. That's definitely appreciated to have. Now the controls here for the steering wheel, you have the expected ones for accessing the audio controls, your volume, and also a voice-activated control switch and your phone switches here. Now the cruise control, it's the typical stalk that Toyota has been using forever, and that's at the 4 p.m. position on the inside of the steering wheel column. The four-wheel drive controls, where some manufacturers, of course, have gone with a simple switch, Toyota is using a twist dial control. So you have your typical areas such as two-wheel drive, 4 high, as well as 4 low. You don't have an auto setting with this system, and I'd have to say I'm not terribly missing it. I'll tell you why. Because when it comes to two-wheel drive trucks, what you've got with the Toyota Tundra is you actually have an automatic limited slip differential. So working with the traction controls and having driven a lot of these types of trucks in the wintertime, I have to tell you, this is one of the first trucks that I've actually driven in the winter that performs exceptionally well in two-wheel drive. In fact, it's taking care of most of the slip problems that we've encountered today out in the Whiteshell. Actually, two-wheel drive is pretty much where we've kept it all day. So that's something that a lot of people are going to be interested in, especially if they're testing some of the competitors. Now, the one thing that we've noticed today while driving the Toyota Tundra is that as much as the switches and controls are very easy to access and understand, I mean, it's really nice to have a button that actually turns on the radio as well as turns up the volume, and one that actually tunes to the channel that you're looking for. But there's something about the layout here that needs a little bit of love. And by that, we mean so many switches on the Toyota Tundra have been placed in such a way that they're below the line of sight. So when we say line of sight, we mean going down the road and having to do this to actually actuate. Now, to the right of the column, we have the controls for the parking sensors, as well as the abilities to turn off the traction control and the tow haul mode. We've been thinking about it, and we thought it'd be kind of nice to try to move these into a different position. We've already seen these triangular switches on the steering wheel, so what's to say you couldn't possibly have them up in this particular area where the HVAC vents are? Now, the HVAC controls, they're very easy to understand. You do have on this particular high level of Tundra both heated seats as well as ventilated seats up front. The rest of the controls, very easy to understand. The screen itself, this is a head unit that we've seen on a lot of Toyota products. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's the exact same one that I experienced on the Corolla recently. So it does the job. And actually, one of the things that I really do like about it when it comes to syncing your phone is with your emails. And it will actually read the emails back to you in a computer-generated voice, but it's a real time saver and certainly keeps you from fumbling around with your phone, which is something you shouldn't be doing when you're driving. Up top, there is a removable pad, like so, to keep things from skidding around. And the rear view mirror has a HomeLink transmitter as well as a compass. So that's included at this particular trim. The visors, they are of the sliding style. So that'll help with keeping the glare down to a minimum. And both of the vanities on this 1794 edition are backlit. Put that out of the way. You also have a padded sunglass holder up top, controls for your sunroof, and also a handy clip here. So if you're keeping things such as parking passes or business cards and things of the like, you've got that going on. It's actually a very well-lit cabin at night when you're looking for things. Now, let's pan over to the glove box, because the one thing that I do like about it is it has the ability to be reconfigured. The shelf that you see inside can actually be removed. So depending on what your storage needs are, you can configure the glove box the way that you like it. Now, the other thing that should also be remembered about the glove box, and why I wish more manufacturers would do this, is give me a lock any day of the week. That would be appreciated. The other thing I wanted to point out, though, is that the center console, it really seems to have a lot of space that could have been better utilized. And I'm thinking of trucks such as the GMC Sierra and the Chevrolet Silverado, with how much of a storage cavity they give you to put additional items here. As you can see, we run out of room quite quickly. There is essentially 3 cup holders if you consider a short cup, or possibly an optional smoker package would go here. You do have 12-volt DC as well as your plug-ins for the USB and auxiliary input jack. There is also an additional 12-volt DC off to the left here. But as you can see, it's all down low, and definitely something you should be manipulating when you're parked. The automatic shifter, there is a column shift available on different trims of the Tundra, but in this particular configuration, we have the floor shift. It does have the sport gate, so you can manipulate it for manual shifting down low. There's no paddles in existence on this particular steering wheel, which I gotta admit has some pretty nice thumb locators. So I do like that. You've got the cavity off to the left here, good place to put smartphone, and an additional cavity down low. So if you had to put any other items that may require, such as a GPS item, to plug in to charge, you have that opportunity there. The console itself, well, it is exceptionally well padded and at the right level for putting your elbow for long drives. There is, if you allow me to move the other camera out of the way, the ability to put items up top here. So there isn't a pad in here, though. I thought that there should be at this particular price level. And oh goody, we do get a 1794 edition badge to remind you why you spent the extra money. On the inside, well, it is a very cavernous type of console. There's plenty of room inside. I mean, you could easily put laptops, netbooks, and just about anything that you could think of that, well, you could almost make this a live well for fishing. There's also additional clips on the inside of the console lid, so you can put pens, tissues, business cards, what have you. So that's just another opportunity for the contractor slash road warrior who needs to have all that extra space. There is, actually I did want to point out before I close the door, a cable pass through here. So you are able to pass through, and there is actually a third 12-volt DC plug-in on the inside. So that pretty much rounds out all of the other interior guts, but we should also point out that the seats not only have the perforated leather, but they also have what definitely looks to be the saddle grade, and they've also taken the 1794 edition badge and they branded it into the leather. Now in the rear doors here, you do have ample door pockets. You've actually got 2 bottle/cup positions here, and you'll notice that there's the additional trimmings, and we've seen this throughout the truck, and this is part of the 1794 edition. So the saddle style stitching, perforated leather toppers, as well as the wood trim, so giving it that westerny type of look. Also deep tint in the back, and actually the Tundras do have special UV protective glass to well, act as a little bit of a sunscreen for you and those in the truck. The driver's seat power articulation, as you can see, recline as well as fore and aft and height. But what you also have here, which is really appreciated, is the ability to raise and lower the front part of the cushion of the seat. Now, why exactly is this important? Well, when you want to make sure that you have as little fatigue as possible when it comes to long drives, you want to make sure that you're supporting your legs underneath. And this is giving you what I like to call a very neutral driving position. Very few vehicles actually have this ability to articulate this way in a manual or a power sense. Now, there's also the lumbar controls that actually, I have to admit, even in the base seat positions that I've sat in the Tundra, the lumbar support for the driver as well as the passenger is very good. So you're definitely going to find these to be one of the more comfortable seats in the class. And in fact, Toyota has done quite a bit of massaging to these seats to make sure that they're as comfortable as possible for the long-term run. Well, that's our look at the 2014 Toyota Tundra, and I have to tell you, when it comes to driving this particular truck, I really have enjoyed how this vehicle is sorted. It's something that I've noticed on some of the newer trucks, such as the Silverado and the Sierra, is that it's almost like they're starting to overbuild what people's expectations are for half-ton. And I think there's a danger in that, because there's a lot of people who are looking at these vehicles as glorified SUVs. And that means that they're simply not looking for something that's built as crazy strong as something like the new 2014 Silverados. When I think of trucks that have the comfort of ride figured out, I think of trucks like the Ram 1500, which with the coil sprung rear actually is about as car-like as you could imagine for a truck. So with a leaf sprung rear, which is what we have here with the Tundra, it seems to be right in the middle when it comes to comfort as well as capability. The other thing that we need to remember is that serviceability is going to be key, and I think they've really done a good job with these iForce V8s in the Tundras for that purpose. I mean, nobody wants to be getting a truck like this and then having to add X amount onto the service bill just because they can't access the engine. The rest of the truck, when it comes to interior, needs a little bit of work, and by a little bit I mean just a little bit more storage space, but everything else is extremely well sorted inside. The only thing that's going to really concern a lot of people who are doing their shop for trucks right now is the economy. And, well, let's face it, Toyotas have been known to be thirsty for so long, it's almost become cliche, especially when Tundra is on the back of the tailgate. The question is, what should Toyota do to address the fuel economy concerns that so many people are going to have for this truck? We could consider the possibility of a global diesel engine to arrive. And we've already seen it start to happen with trucks such as the Chevrolet Colorado, which in 2016 is going to be getting that global diesel engine, which will be clean enough for North American purposes by that point. So we could see something along a 3-liter displacement diesel going on in here, much like the Eco Diesel on the Ram 1500. Or is it maybe time for Toyota to get on board with the abilities to adjust displacement on demand? Maybe that will be the tipping point for more people to consider a truck that we already know people love, people hang on to, and people get excellent resale value with. If you can just afford the extra gas, that might be all you need to think about when it comes to making this your truck buying decision. Now, if you've got thoughts, feelings, or questions about anything automotive and truck, send an email to steelbeltedmind@gmail.com. For the road trip from White Shell Provincial Park in Manitoba, I'm Michael Clark. Keep the shiny side up and the rubber side down. Well, welcome to the dashboard. I'm Michael Clark.
And I'm Brian Park.
And we are in the 2014 Toyota Tundra. And now it's time to give you some perspective from both the driver and the passenger seat and tell you what we thought of driving this particular highfalutin truck. You know, Brian, this particular truck, actually what kind of impressed me with what Toyota's done with pricing is that unlike some of the competition like F-150 and Ram and such, I mean, you can really get those into some crazy MSRPs at the half-ton level. This particular truck here with the trim we're talking about starts at an MSRP of just under 54 grand.
I think that's a steal of a deal, really, for, you know, an up-level truck like this. This is as close as you can get to a Lexus truck as they make, and, you know, for the price-wise, you're on par or below what the domestics are offering.
Well, and the thing that really struck me was some of the equipment that you just simply don't see in a lot of vehicles, especially truck-like vehicles. I mean, the power tilt and telescope wheel, this one being the 1794 edition. I mean, sure, we got a little bit of a saddle thing going on with the leather, but what we've also got here is some pretty nice wood trim. I mean, I gotta tell you, that steering wheel looks straight out of a Lexus.
I've been holding on to this thing for a couple hours now, and you know, I don't mind saying it's a nice wheel to hold on to. It's very comfortable.
You know, speaking of the wheel, we got to remember that we're dealing with something that appears to have no electro assist. I mean, this is a variable assist rack and pinion setup, and it's kind of nice to be dealing with something a little bit more traditional. In fact, I have to say this is one of the nicest steering trucks that I've encountered for a while.
You know, I don't mind it. It seems pretty well. A little bit light, but I think that's in keeping with the luxury feel of the truck. Is that, you know, it sort of disconnects you a little bit from your environment and isolates you in this nice, cushy, quiet pocket as we, you know, sail down the bumpy highway that we got.
Well, the thing that we really noticed about this truck is that how quiet it is. And the one thing Toyota tells us for 2014 is how much they've done to address the NVH issues, noise, vibration, harshness inside the cabin, and it is almost Lexus-like.
It's really tight, like, especially considering the road surface that we've been on today. You know, no squeaks, no rattles, no nothing, and like no wind noise. It's a tight truck. I'm pretty impressed.
You know, when it comes to the road warriors that are going to be using this truck, whether it's being in the contracting business or the financial planning business, what I actually really like about the head unit is the ability for it to read my emails to me. And even though the voice is a little disembodied, it's definitely a time saver.
Yeah, anything to keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel.
Well, that's our dashboard chat for the 2014 Toyota Tundra. I'm Michael Clark.
And I'm Brian Park.
Keep the shiny side up.
And the wheels under the car? I'll get it eventually.
I'm just going to look this way and drink my coffee.